So today I'd like to talk a little bit about working with moon cycles in witchcraft. And there are lots of ways that we can use the moon in rituals and work with the moon. So for Wiccans, for example, the moon rituals would be Esbats, and they would be where the magic and the witchcraft is done, where you take action rather than the Sabbats, which are representations of the seasons, where you would have more of a celebration. So the Esbats for Wiccans are all about magic. Or you can use the moon cycles in an astrological way. So you can look at what moon or what sign the moon is entering. You can look at what other planets are doing in the sky, and you can work your magic around this. So you can work the rituals that you want to work around what the moon is doing on an astrological basis. Or you can look at the moon in terms of what cycle it's in and what phase it's in. So in the same way as you would choose crystals and herbs that represent the magic that you want to do and that work with it, you may do the same with the moon phases. So if you want to let go of something, then you might do this at the waning moon. If you're wanting to grow something, you may do it at the waxing moon. You may use the full moon to be the height of the energy and the new moon to be about real beginnings. So you can use the moon phases in this way. So one way that my witchcraft has evolved is that I would work with the moon cycle. So I would find a moon that I wanted to work with, and I would work along that cycle. So it wouldn't necessarily just be ritual. I would think about what I'm doing in my everyday life in order to manifest that energy. So I would look maybe to start with the new moon and then grow something up to full moon. Or maybe I'd start with the full moon and then I would look to then let that go or diminish it, or I would grieve that until the next new moon when I would start again. So I would work with the moon cycle and really be clicked into it that way. And actually, in a lot of occasions, what happens is I almost am drawn to working at particular phases of the moon. So, for example, at the moment, I've been looking at a real sense of clearing and cleansing, and we're just now at the new moon for January, and that feels to me very much like a clearing moon. So I tend to almost kind of ascribe different kind of themes almost to each of the moons through the year. And some years I will do that all in advance, and other years I will be drawn and kind of driven by what I feel I should be doing with each moon. And sometimes I might ascribe a certain theme to a moon, and then I might get to it and think, actually, that's not the way my life has gone, and I'm going to do this instead. So it really does depend. But if you look at the Anglo-Saxon and you look at the indigenous, there are various names that are ascribed to each moon. So we can look through the moons and see what they're called and then decide to plan to do that specific type of work with those moons as we go. And you'll notice when you search for the names of the moons, even if you're typing in Saxon moons or Native American moons, that every site you look for, every book you pick up will have slightly different names for them, although some may have similar. So part of this really is looking at what you feel the moon is, what you feel the moon represents to you. And the great thing about moons is obviously they change every year. So Some months in a year will have a blue moon, so therefore you'll have two full moons in the same month. Sometimes you'll find that you'll have the first moon right at the beginning of the month, and sometimes you'll have the moon right at the end of the month. So those will take a slightly different change. They will be slightly different every single year. So at the beginning of the year, maybe have a think about what moons you think are likely to come up, what you'd like to name them, and work with a system that works for you. But to stop you having to Google, here are some of the names of the moons. So these, for example, are the Saxon or the Old English moons. And you'll see they're called things like snow moon and strawberry moon and harvest moon. So they're basically looking at what's happening, particularly when it comes to farming, in the ground, in the land. What do you have to do for your crops, for your farm, to produce food when these moons are in the sky? And these are given as the Celtic moons. So you'll notice again that some of them are based around things like, for example, flowers. They're based around grain. They're based around pink, as in what's happening to the sky, what's happening around that time. The ice moon obviously really represents that's the coldest point of the year. So some of these moons, as you'll see, are the same as the Saxon moons. And again, wherever you search, you'll see slightly different names given. And these are the Native American moons. So you'll see here that some of the names are slightly different based on different animals. So for example, we have sturgeon and beaver and buck, which are maybe less important to the farming year of English people in sort of Saxon times, and more important to the farming year and the agricultural year of America. And these are my moons, the moons that I'm going to work with this year. So the first moon, which we're on today, is the clearing moon in January. And that basically represents just really kind of clearing and cleansing and letting go. And then we have the hungry moon in February, which is about sort of resilience. It's about getting through. It's about really kind of working with what I have and recognizing that this is the point where the fields are a bit bare, maybe my cupboards are going to be a bit bare, and it's about doing what I can and making do. And then March is the planting moon, where I start really thinking about what I'm going to do and what I'm going to achieve. And then the seed moon is about, again, nurturing those seeds. So we're planting them in March, and then we're nurturing them through April. So it's about growing rather than starting anything new. And we've got the flower moon and the strawberry moon and the hay moon, which is about different steps of harvest, different steps of reaping what I've been growing at the beginning. And I really like the thought of the flower moon being linked with that idea of Beltane and that idea of May Day. And then we have the singing moon, and really I'm not going to do very much in August apart from have fun with fun people. So I recognise that I don't do a lot of work in August. It's when the schools are off. It's when I just want to have fun. And then we have the harvest moon, the blood moon, and the ancestor moon, all moving into that dark side of the year when all of the real kind of work for me gets done. And in December, I'm going with calling it the Mother's Moon and working with the mothers, like I did this year with Laura Daligan's wonderful retreat that I think she'll probably be running next year as well, working with the mothers. So these are my moons, basically. So when it comes to working with the moons, make it work for you. So if you know that you like to work both on a magical and mundane way, working through the moon by having a particular theme or doing the whole, we're going to go from full to dark and working through that way, then do that if that works for you. If you know that you've only got a certain amount of time and you just want to acknowledge it, then just do something that acknowledges that moon. Or maybe you want to work only with the full moons. Maybe you want to work only with the new moons. We're in a time now where we really recognise that there's no one way with witchcraft. There's no one set book. There's no one set path. So it really is important to look at how it fits within your life, how it fits within your belief system, and what works for you. We don't need to follow anybody else. And whereas it's really useful to watch things like, videos like this and to read books, the only person you have to please in all of this is yourself.